Thank you very much for coming. I hope you all can hear me. The acoustics in here are a little rough. We're trying to use a mic to make sure that you can hear, but also because we're taping tonight and we're going to record this meeting, and then we're going to kind of put it up online for people who might not have been able to attend in person this evening. We are also welcoming anyone that might be joining us via Zoom. Tim O'Brien will be moderating our Zoom call. And before we get started, I would like to thank our students that gave tours this evening, so thank you so much. If you could thank them with me. Much appreciated. So the plan for this evening is to do introductions and to do a brief slide deck and then to open it up for questions and answers. And so in a number of our community forums, this is our 10th community forum, all of our community forums have been open meetings and they've been done online up until now. And so the hope is by having a panel present from a range of the design teams and for people that are here working in the school system, that we will be able to address questions and kind of have a conversation, which is somewhat difficult on Zoom. So I'll start off. Good evening, my name is Doug Lyons. I'm the superintendent of schools.
Hi, my name is Philip Renzi. I'm a volunteer on the Permanent Building Committee. I also live in Wakefield. I'm a parent of 2 children, and so I am here as a Permanent Building Committee member, but also as a parent in Wakefield to discuss this project.
Good evening. My name is Amy McLeod, and I'm the principal here at the high school.
Hi, I'm Brian Black, architect with SMMA. We're the designers on the project.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Helen Fantini. I'm a project manager with SMMA.
Hi, I'm Erin Prestilio, civil engineer with SMMA.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. Lynn Stapleton, we're the owner's project manager. We're with Left Field.
Hi, my name is Tim Baker, project manager with Left Field.
I'm Alan Dahan, a project architect with SMMA.
Thank you so much. So to start off, this is our 10th community forum, as I've shared, and I'd like to just give a little bit of a summary in terms of what brings us here this evening. And so this is kind of we are at kind of year 5. In the fall of 2018 and the winter of 19, we were accepted into the MSBA grant application process to build a new high school. When I was hired as superintendent here, this is year 5 for me. I was assistant superintendent before that for 3 years, 8 years total. But when I interviewed here, one of the first questions that was asked of me on the interview team in the process was, do I think that I could work with a team and craft a statement of interest that could get us accepted into the Mass State Building Authority's grant process to get grant funding to help us build a new high school. And up until that point, we had tried unsuccessfully 3 times, and the state at that time, full disclosure, was kind of inundated with applications. So, that was kind of the charge that I was given when I took this job. Took it very seriously, put together a very thoughtful team. We crafted what we call a statement of interest, and we put it in, and we were accepted into the grant. When you're accepted into the grant, you enter into a lockstep process, right, where you kind of start what they call like a pre-construction phase that is really kind of, it's sequential. So it goes from A to B, B to C. But when we wrote the SOA, one of the things that we really highlighted was this notion that we were in danger of losing our NEASC accreditation. There were several deficiencies that were highlighted in this building that ranged from kind of the lack of spaces that were kind of the appropriate size. This was a junior high school that had an addition added onto it. The class sizes ranged from 480 square feet to well over 1,000 square feet. The standard MSBA classroom is about 800 to 900 square feet. So in terms of scheduling rooms, in terms of developing adjacencies, and in terms of developing a comprehensive high school schedule, right? That's really kind of next gen, that focuses on learning practices that are used in 2020, 2021, 2022, we really were kind of limited with the facility that we had. We were also trying to address real concerns that we had with ADA accessibility. The size of our carriages, for example, if you had a student in a wheelchair, most full-size wheelchairs won't fit into our carriages that are currently here. They're very undersized, and also to go from one end of the building to the next, if you were in a wheelchair, it would take you likely 8 to 12 minutes to get from one place to another. In terms of accessibility, that was a real issue for us, and different parts of the building were also not accessible. So we were trying to kind of address many things when we wrote the statement of interest. When I say many things, they were the big three. The accreditation issue in regard to what was highlighted and the many deficiencies in the building that, again, ranged from sizes of classrooms to science facilities that students were learning in to ADA accessibility. And we'll kind of talk more about that as we go through this process. But these are highlighted on slide number 2 right behind me. I'm not going to read the entire slide, but this slide deck will be available as well as this presentation if you would like to look back. And so I'd like to turn it over at this time to Brian Black.
So it seems like yesterday that we last showed this slide to the Permanent Building Committee when we were kicking off the feasibility study, which is, you can see as Doug mentioned, the lockstep process with MSBA. It's broken down into modules. So module 3 was about establishing the educational vision for the project, developing a space program, investigating the opportunities and constraints of the building sites that were available, which were immediately around this building. In module 4, there was one option that was narrowed down from, I believe we had 11 building alternatives at one point, looking at whether to build on Beasley Oval, whether to have an addition renovation project of this school to try to defray some cost. Looking at Walsh Field, was that a viable building site? It turned out not to be because it's a really poor place to have vehicular circulation. So that was a big concern, the soils on that side. So the process narrowed to one preferred building option because it could best deliver the educational program and do it in the most cost-effective way. And those are metrics that MSBA really is looking out for and standing up for. It's actually part of their mission. We'll talk a little bit about that there are cost challenges that we're looking at now, and we want to be very sort of open and transparent about that issue because it comes down to what are the options that are on the table that you can utilize moving forward for the district. So we're at a critical juncture, which is the red arrow, and we're moving into a stage where town support is critical to the project. We cannot go across that bridge to module 6 and 7, which is detailed design and construction, until we have buy-in from the community. And we've been building on the community's understanding of the project, and the reason we're excited to be here tonight is really to give the community all the information you need to make an informed decision about this. We're not here to advocate for a project. We're putting all the cards on the table, and we've been doing that over the last, say, 14 months. And so we hope that we clarify all the questions that are remaining so that, again, you have all the information you need. We're going to do a sort of review of the design, and that really begins with talking about the educational program. So I'm going to turn it over to Amy to talk about the foundations before we really even start designing anything.
Thank you, Brian. So the educational program is really what drives the building matches and supports the educational program. It's the foundation of what we do in the school. So the school, along with the support of the district, went through a process of creating a narrative. And the educational program narrative is basically outlining everything that we do teaching and learning at the high school, and what we need from a facility to be able to do that optimally for all students. So when we think about some of the pieces that are outlined on the slide behind me, we're really thinking about how education has evolved and how we need a building to evolve with it in order to be able to do these things. So we're thinking about designs that allow for student-centered learning, where students have space, flexible spaces where they can learn together, where they can collaborate. We're thinking about interdisciplinary design, where departments don't work in silos anymore. The idea is that we need departments collaborating together so students can see connections in their learning across disciplinary areas. Obviously, when we talk about technology and some of the technology you're seeing us set up tonight, it's a struggle here for us. And for our students, technology is seamless. It's what they do every day. So we're not only now teaching students to use technology, we need to be able to teach through technology. And so in order to do that, we need all spaces in our building to be able to support that. Some of the other items on this list, I think, speak to the bigger issues of what we're doing with kids, but also having students connect to the community, having spaces in this building where the community can come in, even have meetings like this. You have spaces that are not conducive to helping students see the connection that we are part of the community and the community is part of us. And then I also think that we're talking about helping students to understand the process of education, not just outcomes. Students, spaces where they can go, work collaboratively, work on projects, present to the community, present to their peers, present to their families. And so I hope what you'll see, that's going to come in the next slides, is what the architects have created not only speaks to the deficiencies of what we need to sort of fix in the building, but also ideally what we'd like to create as ideal learning spots to support our program. So I'm going to turn this back over to Brian.
And the diagram, sorry, getting used to this microphone. The diagram is really kind of a synthesis of all of the ideas that are out there. And you heard Amy mention community a lot. So, beyond creating a building that's functional, it does all the things it needs to do, and that it's flexible, it's safe, it's sustainable. There are many layers of goals to the project, but one thing we like to talk about at SMMA is creating community. And there are different sort of layers of community. There's the school community at large, and then there are cohorts, right? It breaks down into these different groups, and we're trying to address all the different sort of constituencies within a school. It's a very complex community. And then there's the larger community outside the building. So our diagram is trying to organize, and one of the first rules of having a community is to have an organization of space. So the diagram is doing that in sort of the big picture. So it's the 4 big clusters of learning with a central common space at the center. That's the heart of the community. It's not owned by any one department or constituency. It's for everyone, and including for the community. We're thinking about a building that is a community resource in addition to being used for a school during the day in many, many different ways. So that's the crux of the diagram. And so when we go into the plan, first a context shot of the plan sitting on where the proposed building site would be, which is on Beasley Oval, the current Beasley Oval. You can see Hemlock Road on the left, Farm Street up along the top. And it's basically a flip-flop of Beasley Oval and high school. So we build on Beasley Oval. When that's completed, we demolish the existing school, and we do another round of site work to build the field and track and parking and all of the sort of amenities outside the building, which are many. As we go in further and look at the plan, and we can see the main entry point at the center of the school. And the color scheme is such that the yellow represents kind of the open hallway system. The brighter yellow are the vertical transportation through the building. They're either stairs or they're elevators. Doug mentioned accessibility. It's going to be a fully accessible building from the outset. Every corner of the building is designed for those with disabilities. You'll be able to get to every level of the building, all of the door hardware, all of the plumbing fixtures, you name it. Everything is going to be thought about with those with physical disabilities in mind. And there's a constituency within the school, the special education, I believe 15% of the school has an IEP. So, I mean, that's a huge segment that we're trying to address in the school. The overall diagram is such that that dining commons is the space that is the heart of the school at the center. And those four big clusters, STEM, humanities, fine and performing arts, health, wellness, and athletics, are the sort of big anchor departments, if you will. But we'll see that each of those departments kind of breaks down into an interdisciplinary neighborhood, if you will. And then we're connecting all of those elements with what we're trying to do is create kind of main streets, right? You can see it in the Galvin, that you have those spaces that sort of cut through. You can see from end to end. It's very easy to find your way through it, very much unlike this building, right? For any of you that took the tour, it's kind of circuitous paths and dead ends and crash corner and all of that. And we're trying to create a very simple layout that condenses the academics on the left half of the plan, and those occupy more than half of the building in terms of square footage. On the right are the big spaces that are kind of the special and community-based pieces with the gym, the auditorium. And so there's a clear organization of the building that we hope to create on each level. Again, these are schematic plans where we'd love to take this further and develop, continue with the project. As we go up to level 2, we can see, or in fact, I think we have a view of that central common space first as kind of an orienting piece. So, I mean, contrast this with the space that we're in now. This is really, it's kind of a part living room, a part, transit terminal, part community center. It touches on all of the large clusters of the school, and you can see them from one place. It's bright, it's open, it's got connections to the outdoors, which we heard over and over as we met with educators in the programming stage. So we just think it's such a fabulous opportunity to have this be the center and really the heart of the school. And it's a two-story space. There are many differentiated spaces within it where different types of learners and different, students with different sensibilities want to sit in different kinds of settings. So this has that for them. Moving up to level 2, the center of the school, that hub space becomes the media center. Now the media center is kind of a windowless room that's too big, and it's difficult, I think, to utilize to its potential. It's hard to find if you're not oriented to the school. So what we did is put the media center in the front and made it very transparent and open with lots of natural light and views out. And again, it's a learning commons at the second level that overlooks the dining commons below. So now there's kind of this connection from the center. Now this is the anchoring space of level 2. Again, we have the STEM, humanities pieces, and health, wellness, athletics has the gym at level 2. This is because this site is very constrained. We only had, I think, 18 acres roughly to work with. And so we're stacking the gym over some other athletics and PE space. And on the left, as we fill in a bit more, there are spaces throughout for special education. There is a terrace space outside the science labs on level 2 for outdoor learning. Immediate access to the outdoors for earth sciences, potentially, astronomy, observatory, things like that, growing plants, and just sort of being outside. We learned from COVID that this is super valuable. And so we heard this very much in the programming. The large group instruction space is kind of anchoring those elements and creating another hub for project-based learning. So this is a large flat floor space, well-suited for multiple classes to meet, to have seminar-style discussion and debate, if you will. It could be used as a performance space, a gallery, for public meetings like this one. So these are, some of the pieces that we think really contribute to the educational kind of value, but go beyond that to help build the community. Moving up to level 3, teacher planning is also anchoring those levels at the center, putting adults in a place where they're easy to find. It's a kind of a service hub of its own, and also the teachers have eyes on what's going on in the hallway space, and they're together. There's a sharing model in place for the classrooms, so the teachers, when they're in their touchdown space, can collaborate, can talk about certain students and how well they're doing in subject A versus subject B. So there's also, just collaboration. So that's a feature of all 3 floors. Level 3 has a similar layout to level 2, with sciences on the inner layer and then general classrooms on the outside with more technical, hands-on learning space at the center of each of those neighborhoods, if you will. Moving to the exterior views. Here's a view from Farm Street looking back. So there was a lot of attention paid to the civic gesture of the building. We knew it would be set back somewhat from the road. So it was a matter of sort of crafting the scale of the building and giving it enough articulation where, okay, you know where the main entry is. It's right in the middle, that glass piece coming through. That's the media center piece. And there was a thought about sort of creating kind of refinement but a playfulness. And there's a balance there. So there were many iterations of this as we went through. The next view is of the arrival, sort of the drop-off pickup area in front of the school. The building itself is fairly simple in material, using a brick masonry palette with metal panel accents, and obviously the glazing, which is used to create patterning that we think knits across, ties together the gym side with the classroom side, and again allows for that excitement to happen in the center. And it's a fairly modest palette of materials. Brick is one of the more affordable building materials these days. Then there's one more view from, call it the back, but looking to the east and seeing kind of these pockets that we've created. And Erin and her team have sort of brought the outdoor learning experience to sort of another level here, and really taking advantage of the connectivity between the inside and outside. And so, again, that's a great amenity for the programs, and that's what really this kind of is all about.
So we've included this slide. One of the things that we really wanted to highlight, MSBA will plug in enrollment, right? How many students you have, and it's an algorithm, and it will give you the approximate square footage that you should have or could have. And so there's always a delta. There's always a delta in design And so we wanted to be transparent, Brian's words, and that's really important to us, is to communicate well and be transparent around the design and really what we're looking for. When we're looking at core academic spaces, the MSBA allows for 48,000 square feet. We have a variation of 9,000 or 9,600 square feet. And that is because we're looking at our ed plan, and we're looking at a number of teachers and the number of classrooms that we need. So there's a delta, right? And so instead of, undercutting classrooms or not having enough space for teachers, we have enough space, and we've built to what we need. And these are a series of trade-offs. So this slide is meant to demonstrate and show a series of trade-offs. In one of our prior forums, someone asked a great question. They said, we don't see a lot of no in this project. And MSBA will kind of give you kind of a minimum square footage based on enrollment, but they also give a maximum, right? And what you don't see in the finished product, in the design, what you don't see is about probably 40,000 square feet that ended up on the cutting room floor because we just had to say no to quite a few things that included athletic spaces, more classrooms, other open areas, additional theater spaces, additional music spaces. So we've kind of stripped down our square footage to really fit the educational plan, and this slide really represents that, right? And I'll say more as we go on to the next slides. So the other piece that I really want to highlight as we're finishing off our slide deck, and we're going to finish off by talking a little bit about the price. And so the price, and Phil will talk a little bit about that, and he will do that much better than I can. But one of the things that's important to note is that the price that we are using is the price for the project complete. It's not for the building alone. So different communities do this different ways. So in a community, for example, in Watertown, Watertown is relocating their high school. They're going to kind of blacktop a park, right? They're going to blacktop a field, and they're going to put modulars there. They'll have kids there for 3 years, okay? Which is a really difficult way to experience high school for, in such a confined space in modulars. It kind of creates a hardship for students and a hardship for teachers. So when you look at they've created a beautiful architectural plan. When you look at that and you look at the cost per square foot, they don't break up, they don't include the cost for modulars. So this project cost that we're talking about is for everything. It's for the road, it's for lights, it's for parking, it's for the new field that's being one will be kind of taken down and the other will be recreated. I think it's just important to make note of that, right? And so what you see here on these horizontal bar graphs is you see the additional core academic spaces and the reasons why we've gone just outside of the MSBA footprint. So this is a kind of a graphic and also an explanation on the right as to what we're doing with the additional square footage. So this is just the kind of the rest of our total space in terms of the accounting for kind of where we're at and what we've gotten out of our total square footage. And so one of the things that's important to note, something that's not part of the project or MSBA will not reimburse for is for example, WCAT, as well as special education offices and central office. So those things right now are all part of the high school and part of the project. And if we needed to move those to other parts of the community, we would need to kind of start from scratch, get a building permit, and go from there. We're told at this point from our design team it would likely cost more money, which raises other questions around, what are the choices when we're at this point, right? What happens if we do this project now, and what happens if we are unable or don't do this project now? And I'll let Phil talk a little more about that. So I'll turn this over to Phil at this point, and then we'll show you the beautiful 3D overview.
Yeah, I think that's an accurate. Cost estimating was performed based on the schematic design that was chosen, which is what the pictures that you've seen tonight. That option 3B is what we called it in the committee when we're reviewing the options. The construction cost came in around $223.8 million. That includes all the hard costs. That includes constructing everything you just saw. So all the physical parts of the construction. And then there's soft costs involved with any project. That's the engineering, the consultant, furnishing. We have, this team we have here, the OPM and our architect, and all of that falls into the soft costs of about $50 million. And so you get a total project cost of about $273.7. At previous meetings, we've discussed the reimbursement, the MSBA, and the effective percentages coming out to about $60 million of the 273 being reimbursed by MSBA, which leaves about $213.7 million to the town to fund. And so that is the numbers we've been looking at. And I'm not going to get too much more into them, but I will say that all our previous meetings where there's been a lot more in-depth discussion are posted on, I believe, our project website. You can go to the WCAT YouTube channel. I believe all previous meetings are on there on Zoom. And so there's plenty of internet information for people to read up and watch some of that information to see some of that. So.
Thank you so much, Phil. And we did hear last week that the MSBA is putting a hold on what they call their accelerated repair program to funnel costs into the construction projects that they have in the pipeline, one of which is this project. So the state has 16 new school construction projects in the pipeline, and the reason that they're putting the accelerated repair program on hold is to funnel more money into kind of the construction projects like you see up here. That's important to note. Now, I would love to have more information on that and tell you exactly how much that's going to offset costs. We don't have that information at this point in time. I will also tell you that Steve Mayo is working with his team to really be thoughtful about how to create mitigation strategies to support kind of the tax burden on kind of vulnerable populations in the community. And so we're really trying to thread a needle here and balance this in a very thoughtful way. And so one of the things that we've been asked in the past is, so what happens if we're unable to get this across the line? I think, again, Phil could probably talk more about this and other people on the panel, but I believe that what would happen is we would go back in the queue, and then we would start from scratch, and then it would likely knock the project out, probably the amount of time that it's taken to get to this point. And so that's one of the dilemmas. There's many dilemmas, but that's one of the dilemmas that we're trying to understand more about as well. And so I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. We have a mic that we're going to kind of get around to you so that we can make sure that we hear your questions clearly, and we'll do our best as a panel to answer any questions that you might have at this point in time. Sure.
Oh, you want me to? Before we start the Q&A, we're just wondering, we have students who are willing to do tours after the Q&A. I know many of you already went on tours. Is there anyone in the audience, by a show of hands, who would like to do a tour after the Q&A again? Great, okay, perfect. So students, I know there's a table of you. If a few of you want to stay to do some tours, if some of you have to leave, that's fine too. So we'll pass the mic. If folks have questions, we can get them out to you.
Who wants to run the mic? Students? Someone want to run the mic around? Anyone over here?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Oh.
Can you hear me? I have a question.
Hello.
Yes? Okay. The Learning Media Center or something that in the center with all the windows. I'm thinking about security.
Yep.
All the windows. Is there bulletproof or, I mean, I know this is crazy, but you just never know. Security.
No, can you hear this? It's a very serious concern. We've heard this I think at almost every meeting that we've had, because it's a real concern in our society, unfortunately. What I can say Obviously, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about what the design might be, but we generally take a very kind of layered approach to creating a secure building and campus. And so we use different sort of, methods to do that. One is sort of electronic surveillance. The facility is basically blanketed with CCTV cameras that are monitored. Every door has a position switch so that someone at the control panel can see, oh, a door is left open. So, and this is an issue with a lot of these scenarios, right, where someone's going in a back door that's been held open or something like that. So those are kind of, a couple of, those are more tactics, right? Bigger strategies would be to create a culture that's safer because there's more of a sense of inclusion in it by everyone. And there's a better opportunity to kind of surveil and understand what's happening in the environment by everyone. And glazing is actually a way to create more transparency so that you can see someone coming, you can react. And so what we try to do is create a situation where you can enact the protocol that's appropriate for whatever the situation is. Yes, there's hardening of some aspects of the architectural enclosure. Again, I'm not really going to go into detail on that, but that's another kind of piece that we can use. So we have professionals that focus on this particular issue, and we'll continue to work on that in sort of future design, detailed design of the project.
Hi, I have two questions. The football field there, is that a full track around it? Will there be a full track around it? Okay. And then just my second question is regarding parking and kind of the traffic flow. Have you kind of analyzed that and discussed how the parking and the traffic flow will be with the school next door as well? Will parking still be allowed along the street and around the perimeter, or will that not be an option going forward?
So we have studied the traffic quite a bit on the project site, both existing conditions and then analyzing what it means when this project is built on the infrastructure in place. We've also coordinated that with Metro Tech. We know how close it is to the project site as well. We've been before the Traffic Advisory Commission in town as well to review our plans for improvements at Hemlock and Farm Street. In general, the traffic will be coming in from the roundabout down Hemlock and then across the building, and then we'll have separate places on site for parents to drop off separately from the buses. There'll also be thanks Brian, there'll also be a consolidated driveway off Farm Street, which will allow parents to access the parking lot and students to access the parking lot as well, so that everyone isn't coming along the building at the same time trying to get to the same place. There may be also opportunities to develop that circulation and provide more places for parents to drop off here as well as a secondary place. Oh, a quantity of spaces, sorry. So right now there's 269 spaces on site. The project includes a total of 330, which is an increase, is a slight increase on site, but how we're accommodating those additional spaces is expanding the parking lot across the street from Landrigan, and we'll be creating accessible access from that expanded parking lot down to the school.
Can you guys talk a little bit about the grading from Farm Street kind of down? Because I think most people realize there's a decent decline from Farm down to Beasley. And you kind of get a sense that the field is maybe dropped down a little bit. But if you guys could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So you're right. The field steps down from Farm Street maybe 4 or 5 feet, and it varies across across Farm Street as you move across, and then drops down another 4 or 5 feet to get to the building. What we've done is that we've found these opportunities, these moments, while we're maneuvering the grade to find places for program on the site. So that's where we've incorporated some all ages play. We've been able to introduce some seating facing the school. It can be used by the community, it can be used by students waiting to get picked up, or it can be used by classrooms during the day, during the school day. We've created little pockets for students to gather, again, either waiting to get picked up or in the morning before they enter the building. So we've found these moments to try and I guess program the site and provide as much as we can as we transition the grade. Oh, okay. So I'm reminded that the new vocational school's entrance will be moved. So right now, all of their traffic is via Hemlock Road, and Hemlock Road kind of dead ends at that campus. So part of that project will be introducing a brand new vehicular access to that campus at the Saugus line. And so we've anticipate that much of that traffic will be removed from Hemlock Road as well, which will be an improvement to conditions right now.
The driveway that's in between the Woodville and the field, right now, that is a one-way. So we come in through the front of the high school, we come out there. So that's going to be two-way, and how is this going to affect the Woodville traffic?
We don't anticipate the Woodville traffic will be impacted much at all. They'll access the site in a similar condition that they do now. I know the start time is not the same, and so those peak hours will be offset. And so we don't anticipate there'll be much of an issue there.
So I had kids both schools.
Sure.
Right now, we can only get to Woodville through the high school front entrance. Drive around, and everyone's coming out that entrance right there. So to pick up your kid from Woodville, you have to come about half an hour early if you want to get a parking spot. So now you have the high school getting out, you have Woodville parents coming in. We're all using that one entrance, all trying to find a parking spot. We don't foresee any traffic issues happening right there between 205 and 245.
So I did not say there won't be any traffic issues. There's always going to be the morning and the afternoon busy times. That's part of a school. We don't design school facilities to mitigate all traffic at all hours of the day. But we're going to do our best to better understand, and that's going to be part of the next phase of design is digging into and figuring these things out as far as how the high school driveway can best be designed to allow the Woodville operations so that so we lessen the impact if any.
Okay.
Hello, I just had a couple questions and concerns. I definitely will be voting yes for this project. I have a son in the high school right now and one soon to be coming, and I have no problem supporting this project, but I have a hard time with the cost. And right now, if you could explain, is that the cost if we were to build today? Because we all know with the economy and the way things are going, things are changing and they're not going down, they're going up. And the way Wakefield is built right now, we have a ton of condos going up that aren't families. We have an older clientele that don't have kids at the school. And if you go on any Facebook page, this is a hot topic. And the next step that you guys talked about was step number 5, was town community. And I have a hard time thinking that our community a population of it is going to want to support a school costing this much money. This is a lot of money. So supporting it, I think, is a hard reach for some people, especially if they don't have kids going to school. They're on a budget. No one wants their taxes going up. So what does this cost cover? Is this if we break ground today? What's the projection of this cost? My other concern, which I didn't realize until today, is that the gym is on the 2nd floor. I've had the pleasure of teaching underneath the gym and hearing basketballs, so I really hope that design is looked at carefully because it is a huge concern.
In terms of cost, the cost that you see presented here tonight is intended to take us through opening of the new school. We've escalated costs to midpoint of construction, at which point we will have all contracts signed. So, but the total project cost that we presented here tonight is a budget that will hold through the duration of the project. We looked at several construction indexes out there that are projecting through 2024. And we took the highest of those. So we feel confident that the research that we did on trying to establish what the cost will be will hold. You know, something else could happen down the line, but for now, we feel like we've erred on the side of being very conservative about the cost and ensuring that we carry a project budget that will get us to the end of the project without increasing.
And some crazy reason you don't reach budget or there's leftover, what happens to that leftover?
The leftover goes back to the town. You don't spend it, you know, then if you don't spend it, you don't bond it. So the bonding will occur on a phased basis. So.
Yes, the gym, when we first put the gym on the second floor, we were testing out, you know, what are the adjacencies that could work with that. We designed Swampscott High School, which has the gym on the second floor. And we looked at some of the conditions there. We made sure that we were not going to have spaces that are highly sensitive to noise, right? Because yes, you'll be hearing basketballs down underneath. So what's under there? The locker rooms, the other phys ed spaces, the kitchen, or at least the servery, a big bathroom block. So we moved out all of the space that would be, for example, office space. In the first round, we had the district office, sorry, Doug, under the gym. And we knew that was not going to fly, but at the time it was, you know, sort of, we knew that there was going to be an evolution of it. So, you know, when we have conditions like that, there are some barriers that we can put in place, but we know that the vibration is the real issue. And so, yes, we've been sensitive to that and we'll continue to do that.
Thank you. First off, thanks everybody for all your time on this. I'm a Wakefield resident, very excited about the possibilities here. Couple questions. One, is there a high school like this that we could go look at that's finished somewhere in the state?
Yeah, there are many. I mean, we've designed a lot of high schools. The Somerville High School is one that opened recently. We toured the admin and project team there, and there was a lot of sort of gravitation to what we designed in terms of the dining common space, the heart of the school. And although that's a unique project in terms of the size and, you know, it's on a hillside and things like that, I think the basic tenets of the organization are there in terms of creating neighborhoods on the interior and creating that, really the heart of the school. What others? Billerica would be similar in layout. That's right. That wasn't designed by our firm, but you know, it's fairly nearby and you know, very modern, and I think fairly simple approach. Different in terms of how the classroom wings are designed. That approach was to create a series of kind of double-loaded corridors, right? So very kind of linear organization, where what we're trying to do is create kind of more like pods, if you will. But I think the common space there would be similar to what we're proposing in many ways. It's a double high space.
And follow-up question, we'll probably be trying to convince naysayers, based on your experience building other high schools like this, what are some things we can socialize to folks that maybe don't have a high school student I actually have a high school student who's going to be out of high school when this is done, but I'm excited to invest in this. How do we get maybe some of the older members of the community to embrace this, why it's good for the community?
Yeah, there's no easy answer to that question. I think, one of the things that, we've looked at and discussed is, the cost-benefit analysis, looking at if we are able to do this. We're likely, because of the amount of time it took to be accepted into the grant process, we're probably a decade plus behind where we should be in terms of being entered into MSBA. From my perspective. And so really it's about timing, but I do think we are working really hard with our legislative delegation, working with the state and MSBA, petitioning them that, schools that are in the pipeline, they need more support. We need more support. And we're seeing some kind of gestures on their part that they understand this and they need to support more effectively, financially, more effectively than they are currently. So we're seeing some movement in that space. So I think it's a combination of things. One is just the timing of this. The global economy, it affects everything we do. The cost of fuel affects everything we do. Heating a building like this that is not efficient affects everything that we do. So this is not different than trying to expand your home at this point in time. The major difference really is time and thinking about this. For me, I think the dilemma is a decade from now, right? So if we were to do this a decade from, if we were scheduled to open in January of 2027, if we were moved out to 2036 or 2037, what will the costs look like then, right? And so that's kind of our challenge. The other real part of this is that we have parts of our school, parts of this building that are not accessible, right, to students that we have coming from our community to the school. That is a very real issue. And so those are things that we're looking at that are kind of create a sense of urgency for us to try to get this project across the line while also respecting the process. It's a community vote, and the community has to vote it up or vote it down. And we're just trying to provide the best information that we have at this point in time. I hope that addresses your question on some level.
Yeah, so that was a lot of words. I'm thinking I'm in line at Dunkin' Donuts and I'm behind somebody who's 70 and they're like, there's no way I'm voting yes. And I want 3 reasons why.
Yeah.
And I would love if you guys could give us that info.
So first, I apologize for a lot of words. If you had told me you were at Dunkin' Donuts, I would have probably been more concise.
It's all about speed at Dunkin' Donuts. One thing is the home values. With a strong school system, the home values do increase in the town. So that is one factor. And then other strong school systems draw people to the community, which help with tax impacts, decreasing the tax impacts the more population you have.
Yeah, I guess I would like to add to that. There's a cost to doing nothing, too. This building is old. So, again, the accessibility issues that Superintendent Lyons has raised have to be addressed. Systems will fail. The community will have to continue to put money into this building. So that's something also to keep in mind. And the fact that you do have this opportunity with the MSBA right now. Yes, you're estimating your project and budgeting at a very tough time with the market, but you do have these funds available now, and waiting will, in fact, put you back at the end of the Dunkin' Donuts or MSBA line.
That was good.
Question on the cost again. I do believe the project needs to be done. We need the school, and it's only going to cost more. So it's going to cost more and more and more, so we've got to get it done. But there's a lot of people in town on fixed incomes, and we've been reading in the newspaper and online that it's like $1,400 a year extra on your property taxes for 30 years. Is that right? Is that about right? Something like that? That's going to hurt a lot of people. So what is being done to lower that cost? Is there anybody in town working to get more funding from state or federal agencies to get more money either this year, next year, the year after to help these people?
I think Steve Mayo and his team are really working hard on this, and I think that this is one of the most important things that they're looking at is just how to support this, right? How to create some balance, and how to create support for citizens that are going to be impacted or hit most by this. So I would love to kind of list a lot of details at this point. I think that, they're working on it, and that's, I think, the best information I have at this point in time. We're also, again, I said this earlier, the state has to kind of step up and support projects that have already invested all of this time and all of these resources. I think that's something that's going to come. It's just a matter of when, right? The state is usually not timely with this information. And so, we're just completing a kind of an election cycle, so hopefully we'll be hearing some news very soon, because it's really important, not only to us, but to the 15 other projects that are in the state that are happening.
As Phil was noting, on the project website, we do have a tax calculator, and you enter the assessed value, which is different than your property's value, that's to be sure. And then the average home value is $675 in Wakefield, and that's a $1,320 tax impact. It goes lower the lower your assessed property value is.
You said that the bottom line price is guaranteed. Is that correct, young lady? Wow. So if, no matter what the cost is in this building, you will not come back to the town and say, look, I need another $1 million.
We're tasked with building a budget that will see us to the end and opening day. MSBA requires that of us, and the town, for their planning purposes, require it of us as well. So we did a lot of due diligence on trying to build a budget that we were confident that would take us to the end.
Again, all I'm asking is, at the very end, you can't come back to the townspeople of Wakefield and say, look, and I'm sorry, our budget ran over, we need another $10 million. That's all I'm asking. Can
You're
you make
correct.
a guarantee that we can't do that?
That's what I'm sitting here today saying. We built a budget that we feel confident in getting to the end of this project and opening the school with this budget. We're hoping to bring the project in under that budget, but we had to build a budget that would get us to the end during these difficult times and volatility in the market.
Yeah, if just a comment on that. I mean, as I understand it, that's the limit for the project. And if costs escalate further beyond the maximum that's projected, that comes back out of the project, it doesn't raise the number. The scope shrinks, right?
In order to maintain the budget, there's a lot of avenues that we can go down to make sure that we maintain the budget.
Thanks. And then just a follow-on comment to the Dunkin' Donuts, and speaking to folks that are on fixed income, a couple of points to the superintendent's remarks earlier. There is activity at Town Hall and something on the town warrant for the upcoming town meeting to basically, if you're familiar with the state's circuit breaker, where there's tax relief for people that are in need, the town has the option to match those funds or even go beyond matching them 100%. And it's my understanding that what's on the warrant would give the town the flexibility to match those funds up to 150%. But I'm not on the board of assessors, so I can't speak to the specifics of it. But I do know we're going to vote on it pretty soon. Town meeting's this Saturday? Yeah. And then just I think, one other point on the cost for me is that I think about the Galvin project. And when the Galvin project failed at town meeting in 2002, the cost would have been $32 million to build that school. It didn't get through town meeting. There were like 300 people there. It needs a 2/3 vote. It didn't happen. We didn't manage to re-engage the MSBA for, I think it was 7 or 8 years. And that building was completed in 2013, I think, 2012. So, and at that time, it cost us $74 million. So that's the reality. I mean, we know that we've seen a lot of escalation in construction costs lately. And it's been like, you see like 3.5%, 3/4% year over year, and then all of a sudden 14% a year. It's crazy. So people say, well, what if the next 2 years are 14%? Well, what if the next 10 years are 14%? What's this building going to cost us in 2036? Is it going to be $500 million? So that's what I think about. It's not very real, but it's not outside the realm of possibilities. I did have a question, but I'll have to come back to it because I got on a rant there. Sorry.
So I'm thinking most people here tonight are probably for this. I'm certainly for it. I have children that will hopefully be there. They'll probably be in the high school while it's being built, but still for it. And as she had mentioned too, it will certainly increase our real estate values as well. But I don't want us to look at this from a selfish perspective, right? I wanted to look at it from our children's perspective. What can we do to help create awareness, right, to the town to help this get approved? And I don't know too if there's been any polling. Do we have the 2/3 to get this passed? I don't know if there's any feedback on that anywhere as well.
Thank you so much. I don't believe polling has been done at this point. I get the mic back no matter what. It's exciting. Yeah.
So, anything we can do to increase awareness?
I think just sharing the information that you're hearing tonight, I think would be helpful and really kind of dispelling the myths, right? And so that's what I think I would advise.
Yeah, and I will just add there is a campaign for Yes for WMHS. .com, of course, got to get the plug in there. But, there is an organized group of folks in town that really want to see this project happen. We're out talking to the elementary school PTOs, the middle school PTOs. We are available anytime if you have questions. Check out the website. We have some additional resources on top of what's on the town site. If you want to get involved, if you want to volunteer, feel free to jump on the site, let us know, or grab me afterwards, drop me an email. But we're trying to raise awareness, but it's a little tough. We're using social media, we're using word of mouth, so I think the biggest thing folks can do is just talk about the project and make sure people are aware that there is going to be a vote about this. If we're lucky, there'll be 2 votes. If it passes at town meeting, we'll be at the ballots in March. But we need to get the 2/3 vote at town meeting first, and I think a lot of people think, this project's just going ahead. It's already a done deal. So that's the biggest thing we have to overcome is this isn't going to happen unless people want it to happen and show up and vote for it.
That's correct. I don't know if people in the room heard that. There'll be a special town meeting on January 28th to vote for this project. Right, and so according to Ms. Veyer, that date is not set in stone yet because we have to get through December 21st, which is the MSBA vote. And once that happens, then that will enact our January town meeting, special town meeting. And so we will be putting out information on that as well. So I'm looking at the time, just thinking about our students and some of our some people would like to go on another tour. I think we have time for a few more questions.
Yeah, how you doing? So it really comes down to square footage, right? And reimbursement for the square footage, more or less, when it comes to the dollars and cents of it. So, for example, your office, the administrative offices, there are other communities where the administrative office is not in a school building.
Yes.
if the town has square footage that could be used or could be made available for that kind of a thing.
Yep.
And, you know, maybe the Cablevision is certainly best suited in the school, maybe it's not, but let's pick, you know, the administration and the Cablevision. If the town had facilities that could be used for that purpose, could that be pulled away, lowered the square footage, as the legislative people are trying to increase the offset? You know, there's two sides to that. So I'm just curious as to, I'm sure that's been thought of and looked at. I'm wondering what, and I have another question after that.
Yeah, I don't, so the exact square footage, I know it's been looked at, but for the costs, Jim, I don't know that it would offset so significantly that it would really be, that it would push it over the line. And Chip just said something that's important. So Chip, I'm just talking about the cost savings to the project. But if we were to relocate the offices, kind of the working theory is it would likely cost more at this point to design a new space. For example, we've talked about the herd, for example. You know, why couldn't, you know, the high school, we've looked at a number of these scenarios. And we believe that in the footprint that we're building in, it's the most cost-effective way to do it at this point in time. But we have looked at exactly what you're describing and cutting down the footprint. So you're decreasing the square footage, but then you got to recreate that square footage someplace else, right?
Yeah, and it's just assume like the herd, it's a building that the town owns, maybe it could be worked out. My other question is operational costs. Is the operational cost of the future school lower than the day-to-day operational cost of the current school, would you say? Or what is that?
I think the answer is yes, because we're looking at our, you know, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, and systems that would be, and as well as a building that would be so much more efficient and operate so much more effectively than this current building. Right now, this current building, you know, in the spring and summer when the temps go up, you know, the students can speak to this, but half of the building will hover around. Tim O'Brien, I'm looking at Tim. Half of the building can be about 68, and the other half of the building can be about, you know, 82. And so it's just an example, but a new building would operate far more efficiently than this building, far more efficiently.
I like that long-term budget.
Thank you, Jim.
And I think that's kind of an opportunity to talk about the long-term goals of the community in terms of sustainability too. Yes, look at the walls of this building. There's no insulation in them. There are many windows that are single pane and have no thermal break. So all of the money that the community is spending on fossil fuels to heat the school in the winter is going right out the wall. And, you know, that's, to me, that seems like a pretty bad value. So, you know, correcting that as part of what the new project would do. You know, on top of that, we're looking at 20% efficiency, energy efficiency beyond even the building code requires, and even 10% beyond what the new stretch code will require, among many other sustainability goals. This is a whole sort of, you know, side, you know, impetus of a project. If you really are concerned about what's happening in the environment, you know, there's a lot that this project can do, and teaming with WMGLD, I always get the letters mixed up, sorry, is building a microgrid to serve both the new school, high school, and the VOC, and to be there for, in case, you know, to have emergency backup in case of power outage. So there's redundancy that would be built into that. So it's part of a long-term trajectory for the town to be, you know, sort of forward-looking in terms of the climate. So that's another piece to look at. For the folks who are not aware of the issues affecting the school, I do think always going to the project website is a good place to go. Looking at the, you know, even reading the SOI is eye-opening. It really describes in a lot of detail what's sort of wrong, what's you know, affecting the delivery of education. The statement of intent to join the MSBA in the grant process. And so all of these documents, including the schematic design report, all the way back to the assessment of the facility, and hey, Doran Whittier did this 6 years ago, right? This information's been out there. So there are documents that folks can go to online and read up on, what's affecting it. I do think that being here in person, getting more people to do tours of the school would be helpful in terms of just seeing what the reality is of the conditions here. That's my 2 cents.
Sorry, Doug, me again.
Yeah.
So I always tell my kids there's no such thing as a dumb question, so I'm just going to ask this question. It seems like budget is the big key that's going to keep coming up, and the cost of this project. I know you guys are super far into this project, you've already got your design, but is there any areas that could be changed or taken out or cut that you guys could say, hey, community, we hear you, this project is expensive, we're afraid it's not going to pass, we're going to do this, and the cost is going to come down. Like, I look at that dining area, that's nicer than where I went to college. Like, we have kids graduating from this high school now and in the past going to Ivy League schools. It's not the building that's sending these kids to college and succeeding. So, again, I am voting yes, I want a new building, but I do think the cost is going to kill us, and I think we're going to be back here again. So.
So I think the rendering that we show, we can deliver that pretty economically. It's not really a driver of cost of the project like this. What's really a driver of the cost is the square foot cost. And we've seen an explosion of the square foot costs in the last even 6 months from when we did the PSR in the spring. We saw a huge bump of the projection of cost per square foot. And now that's not even looking at an actual design. That's really just kind of square foot costs of a typical school, right, that's out there. And you want Wakefield to be competitive with other schools around, right, that there's at least, and you're creating an environment that's people want to be in, I think, when it comes down to it. But we've seen in the last 5 years, I think, about $100 a square foot increase each year of building costs. If you go on the MSBA website, they have a tool that you can go to that shows you the cost of every project, and it will show you the average, it will show you inflation, and in the last 5 years, and especially during COVID, that line just went up vertically. So what we've tried to do is to capture those projected costs in a budget. It's not a building, it's not a design yet, it's a schematic, right? And so if we go to the next stage, we design it to a much higher degree of detail. Then it becomes a building project. There are substantial pieces of this that can be modified. But what we're looking at is, again, setting a budget and then striving as we project the project ahead to come in below that budget and deliver that to the community.
I think we need to get kids on tours.
I do have one more question over here.
Yes.
It has to do with the fact that we're on probation status already.
Correct.
And so what happens next?
It's my understanding at this point in time from NEASC that we will remain on our probation status until the facility is renewed or renovated, one of the two.
So probation status could be indefinite, or how long do we have to hang in probation status, and what happens?
I don't know if I don't believe it's indefinite, but I do believe that as long as we're actively seeking a remedy, they will continue to work with us. Yeah. So we do, Amy just shared, that we do provide them regular updates around the progress that we're making in this area. So, yes. So I think if we can, we need to get students on tours. And so is it, what, do you want a quick one, Andy? Yeah, we have pretty detailed reports back from, I think, maybe 2011, 13 from NEASC indicating exactly what you're talking about. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming this evening. We'll wait a few minutes after if you'd like to come up if you have additional questions. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to the students so that they can kind of bring people on tours and get people out for the evening. So thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it.